Welcome to episode 104 of the Camerosity Podcast, the world's first and only open source film and digital photography podcast. My name is Mike Eckman, and happy Groundhog Day! That darned vermin saw his shadow, and if you believe Pennsylvania-based superstitions, that means there will be another 6 weeks of winter. In our last episode, we had a loaded house with over 20 guests discussing a wide variety of topics, from Fujifilm lab scanners to early DSLRs to our cautionary tale not to snort radioactive lenses. Tonight's episode will hopefully be a little bit more structured, as we decided to take a suggestion from our Discord server and talk about the new wave of modern lenses being made for digital and film cameras. From TT Artisans to Viltrox, we will do our best to make some useful observations for this new generation of lenses. Theo is in Japan this week, so he won't be joining us, but everyone else is here, and I can see the waiting room is filling up. So let's just hit the admit all button and let everyone in. While everyone's joining, I wanted to give a real quick shout out to our friends at the Embrace the Grain podcast who recently recorded their 100th episode. Congratulations, guys. It is too bad that Jeff and Gabe seem to be stuck at episode 99. Otherwise, I could have congratulated them as well. In other news, the Camerosity world just got a little bigger with Camerosity in Spanish, hosted by Fernando Villava. Hey, Fernando, do you want to give a quick intro for your show?
Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for letting me in. I'm really very happy to having your confidence to now create a Camerosity brother or son in Spanish. Muchas gracias. A todo el que nos escucha en castellano, entiende castellano o habla castellano y quiere hablar de cámaras, está bienvenido a Camerosity en español. You just go to camerosity.es. Camerosity.es. Thank you very much, Mike.
No problem. So it's still open source, right? People can call in?
Of course, that's the same spirit. I will keep it all the way. Of course, It takes time to develop the people let know. But we have a great invitation last time. It was one of the partners of a camera store with K. It's the largest camera store of used cameras in Europe. It was happy to meet having Nico Yacera.
So if the Spanish version of Camerosity takes off, are you then going to do a German version as well?
Yeah, naturally.
Gonna be a busy man. Because you're always Fernando from Germany for me, yet you're doing the Spanish podcast. So, all right, well, we got a bunch of returning callers. The usual suspects are here. Mr. Pat Casey, hello. Mr. Will Pinkham. I do not see AJ, so we may have to put a call out for him to do sort of a well-being check. Bob Rotoloni. Hey, Bob.
How you doing, Mike?
How you doing? Norris is here from Chicago. Welcome back, Norris. Well, we'll just pretend like Norris said hello. Mark Widhalm.
Yes.
Cletus. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's what it says on your Zoom name.
That's my middle name.
Cletus is a newbie. He just joined the Facebook group. He's struggling right now with a Retina 3C paperweight.
Okay.
Somebody suggested that that's a reflex, wasn't it? It was
a reflex 4.
A 4 that has got a bound up shutter, and somebody very helpfully suggested that he Ekman it and soak it in lighter fluid, but I'm not sure he hasn't gone that far yet.
That is one camera that will not work with.
Well, it was only $15, so I don't feel too bad.
No, you didn't do too bad.
Which lens did it have on it?
It's got the 135 f4.
Oh, okay. Couldn't have been the 1.9.
You could get an adapter and do the 20-foot minimum focus on that and take pictures of people across the street from your house. They'll come out real nice.
I'm not a fan of a 135, so it's a paperweight.
Yeah, unfortunately, those cameras are freakishly difficult to work on. I inherited one from my father and was one of the last people to get it into Chris Sherlock down in New Zealand. And before that, I'd been in Germany and Berlin. And I went from store to store, and they were like, das tut mir leid. We don't work on those anymore. Are you kidding me? Like, have you seen how many parts are in that thing?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll open it up one day and just, I don't know, mess around, I guess.
I did that once too. I think it was a 3 though that I opened, not a 4. And I had no expectation that I would get it to work, but I just kind of wanted to see what it looked like in there, and it was pretty scary. I mean, there's just parts everywhere. I mean, there's a piece of like the cocking mechanism that's in front of the mirror, like behind the Kodak Retina Reflex nameplate. Like it just sort of wraps around the entire thing. And there's piano wires in there going all the way down to the aperture dial below the lens mount. I mean, there's a cocking rack that looks like an alligator tooth. I mean, that is absolutely the German mantra. If you need 10 parts to do something, they use 20.
It'll go on a shelf and look nice.
Yeah,
then.
but when they work, man, they are fantastic cameras.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
It worked for about 4 actuations and then seized up completely.
That's really common, honestly, and I've run into that, and it's not just the Retinas. I mean, people sometimes find these old cameras that haven't been serviced in, a quarter century or longer, and what they don't understand is that you fire them once or twice, and they may actually act like they're fine. And I think sometimes, sellers who don't know any better will try and sell them and say this camera works, but what you're inadvertently doing in those first half dozen or so actuations is you're spreading around the sludge. And after you fired them a couple times, you've effectively moved the waxy goo or whatever dried up lube is in there, and it gets to a point where it'll no longer work anymore. So, as much as you want to test fire a found old camera to make sure it works, you may inevitably be opening Pandora's box and actually causing it to fail. So
the Retina Reflexes are also notorious because they have these, like Mike was saying, piano wires. They've got these systems of pulleys and threads that are all connected that actuate different parts of the camera. And if any one of those jumps a pulley or snaps or stretches out because it's old, then the whole thing is shot.
Yeah. Well, it looks pretty.
yeah.
Oh, they're great cameras. They're beautiful.
Is it safe to say that the Instamatic Reflex inherited all of the weaknesses of the Retina Reflex?
Probably not all, but I mean, they're going to fall into the same general leaf shutter SLR, that it can affect anything from the Kowa SLRs to the Fotlander Bessematics, the KW Pentina, name any DKL mount leaf shutter SLR from the 50s, 60s, and, even into the early 70s. And they're just really difficult to work on because there's extra parts that don't exist on focal plane shutters. When, if you think about what a leaf shutter has to do to open and close, but on an SLR, you need light to be passing through the lens, reflected into the mirror to go up into the viewfinder so that you can pose your image. So how do you have a shutter that's not exposing your film but still allowing light to get through? So there's something called a capping plate back there, which is an extra piece. And some shutters have to open, close. And do you want to have an instant return mirror and blah, 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 blah? I mean, there's just the complexity of a leaf shutter SLR is far more than just taking a focal plane SLR and putting in a leaf shutter. I mean, there's a lot of extra things in there, and they're just hard to fix.
So these are similar to the Coniflex then, right?
Yeah, very similar.
I have a working Coniflex and I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, if they work, they work, I mean, it doesn't mean that the Kodak is worse or better or Zeiss is worse or better. I promise you, there are plenty of Zeiss Contaflex SLRs that are dead too. Right. Sometimes you can get lucky and find a Retina Reflex that works. It's really just luck of the draw, but they both were built to similar high quality standards. I mean, Kodak AG was a great company. They made really good stuff. And, I don't think it's fair to say one's better than the other, but if you happen to have one that works and it's going to continue working, then, keep using it, enjoy it.
Right.
So Norris, did you get your audio problem solved?
I did. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Norris, where were you recently? You sent me a selfie. Who did you see recently?
Oh, I saw Johnny Sisson at Central Camera.
Yeah, and I was texting him. I really wanted him to jump on tonight because he told us he would be participating more, which is yet to happen. So I've been kind of ragging him. I miss him. And I thought tonight's topic he might have something to add to it since it's relevant to stuff he may be selling at the store.
Absolutely.
But the last couple episodes, really since 100, we haven't really had any kind of structure, and we just sort of winged it. And I love those episodes. Honestly, 103 was one of my favorite episodes I've had in a really long time. I just thought the wide variety of topics we talked about was incredibly fascinating. So, but we really wanted to have, something with like a little bit more dedicated topic. And we had some really terrific suggestions on Discord. I have a couple others that I'm really working on. I have one that with Norris's help, may become a reality. I'm really excited to have. I really want to do another Retina episode since we kind of just already talking about those two. The last one we had with David Jentz was a closed episode, so we want to do another one of those coming up soon too. But tonight's episode is going to be, we were going to say Chinese lenses, but I think not all are made in China, or maybe they are made in pseudo China. I don't know where a lot of these lenses come from, but there has just been in the last 5 to 10 years an explosion of really neat, high quality lenses made by companies that, when the cameras that we collect were current, no one had ever heard of these companies. No one had heard of Seven Artisans, TT Artisans, MS Optics. Just there's so many more choices that exist today with focal lengths and maximum apertures that were impossible back in the classic era. I mean, you have, the Canon Dream lens was 50 millimeter f/0.95, which was unheard of, but somehow, beyond all odds, they were able to do it. Nippon Kugaku made the Nikkor 1.1. There were a couple sub 1.2 lenses back then, but not many. But now just go to Amazon and there's a dozen or more options. There's even wide angle lenses. Don't you have one, Norris? A 35 f/0.95?
I do. I actually just left it in storage after I showed it to you. I don't have it on the camera, sorry.
Typically, the fastest lenses are always the 50 millimeter primes. To be able to achieve those ultra wide apertures, incredible amounts of bokeh, if that's your thing, on some of these new computations, is someone's doing something really good. And I mean, a lot of these lenses are pretty decent. So we thought we'd kind of cover them. I will be honest, I don't have a ton of experience with them, but I know Steven has a lot of experience. Paul has shot in quite a few, Light Lens Labs lenses and such like that. So I don't know, how do we kind of get started here? Steven, do you want to maybe give us like a little bit of history of some of these companies and maybe how we got to where we're at today?
Well, a lot of them started, looking back 20 years ago, people were going for things like the C-mount lenses made for machine vision cameras. And there was the Fujian China lenses. People thought that Fujian was the name brand, and it was actually just the place where these lenses were made. It was like putting Tokyo, Japan on a lens. Fujian China was where they were made. And they were selling for like $30 or less in some cases. So that kind of attracted people to what you could get in something like that. Strictly manual focus lenses, only covered small mirrorless cameras like Micro Four Thirds, but that kind of got everyone's attention to cheap Chinese lenses, and it's grown exponentially since there through manual focus lenses of a much higher quality level to ones that communicate electronically with the camera and have electronic aperture control, but are still manual focus. We've seen some zoom lenses appearing, and recently they've been getting into autofocus lenses within the last few years, maybe last year or two, I would say. And we're even seeing some really crazy, remarkable things like autofocus anamorphic lenses that no one else has done at all, that no Japanese or German or European manufacturer has ever considered creating, has now been done by Chinese companies.
Is it legal to make these lenses for any system you want?
Well, that's the sticking point. It's very easy for them to make mechanical lenses, fully manual, that don't communicate with the camera. But we've seen Canon go after companies like Viltrox for the RF mount and have successfully shut them down and stopped them from making autofocus lenses that communicate with the camera. And just recently, Nikon has gone after Viltrox. Their Z-mount patent in China has been granted finally, and they're now suing Viltrox and trying to either claim royalties or maybe even prevent them from making autofocus Z-mount lenses.
So is it because they like reverse engineered the communication protocols that the lens uses to talk back and forth with the body?
They most certainly did. And we've seen both Nikon with the Z mount and Canon with the RF mount not really want to open it up to third parties. Both have done so strictly for their APS-C models, but have not allowed any other company to make autofocus lenses that cover full frame. And so Viltrox was kind of the only game in town, and everyone was kind of surprised that they seemingly had the ability to make these lenses, but now it turns out they were doing so without permission.
I didn't know Bob was going to come, but Bob, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Nikon historically has always been extremely cooperative with other companies. You know, they got started in the civilian market making lenses and the lens mount and the rangefinder for the first Canons. They've made lenses for Bronica. They've made lenses for Mamiya. They've partnered with other companies, and they always, in my mind, seem to be a company that wouldn't mind somebody else making lenses or, piggybacking, so to speak, on their technologies. But in today's day, you're hearing more about these kinds of lawsuits. Do you think that that's a cultural change at the company, or can you come up with any reason why they may have changed their stance on that?
Well, in the early years, they wanted to sell as many lenses as they could, so they were willing to take on other mounts. They also made lenses for the Marshall Press camera and, like you said, Bronica and whatever, and that increased their market share of the optics world. And but nowadays, I think they're more concerned with just keeping track of their own technology and keeping other people. There's so much money involved nowadays in R&D that, and the lifespan of some of this stuff is so short now. They don't have a lot of time to make their money back, so they need to be careful. In the old days, you came out with a camera, it was on the market for 8 or 10 years, so you made your money back. But nowadays, they last, 18 months, and they're coming out with a new camera, if less.
Yeah.
So I think this is probably the same idea with the lenses. And also, we all know that they make more money on the lenses than they ever did on the bodies, okay? The bodies were designed to hold the lenses, and that's what they wanted to sell, the lenses. And Nikon, like for the reflex system, the rangefinder system was much more limited, but for the reflex system, they made something like 20 million lenses before they even went to autofocus. So, it's a big market for them, and they want to hold on to it. And with the way the world's going today, they're down to so few makers in Japan anymore that it's just them and Canon, really. It's all that's left. And they're just trying to hold off the rest of the world as long as they can.
So who are the big players? Anyone can answer this one. Who are the big names to look for if you want to you just bought a Leica M4 body, you can't afford a genuine lights lens, and you're looking for something to buy to adapt to your old camera, and you have a limited budget, but you can go on Amazon. So who would you look for?
Yeah, if it were me, I have all three of those, and plus Venus optics. If it's a film camera, then I'm more cautious about what I buy. I probably would not go with a 7 Artisans or a TT Artisan, just because with a 50 millimeter lens, you're going to need to be very careful to make sure the rangefinder is accurate to the cam, because they aren't always accurate. If you're using a digital camera, it's a different story, because you're going to be able to use live view to make sure that it is adjusted. There'll be a fair amount of work to do on a 50. So if it were me and I had an M4, M4P, M4 II, I would go with a 50 millimeter, probably a light lens lab lens, just because they're going to be more accurate.
Paul had to step away. He's talking about the adjustment. They make some of these lenses, Stephen. Is it all of them where they actually give you like a tiny little Allen wrench in the box when you buy the lens, where you can fine tune, right? Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, some companies will do that and some won't. And that's the case even for lenses made for digital mirrorless cameras, that they'll simply focus well past infinity, and maybe they'll publish instructions on their website, maybe they won't, that there's usually like 3 screws on the barrel for those, that you focus them to infinity on your camera, loosen the screws, rotate the barrel to the infinity lock, and tighten it back down. So they are really expecting you to do that. It's more of an issue definitely with rangefinder coupled lenses for the Leica cameras, but it seems like calibrating focus is just not something they really concern themselves with when the lenses leave the factory.
But do you think that that's due to a shortcoming in the design, or that they understand that there's so many different cameras out there from different eras that there's no way they could make it one way that would work for everybody, so they leave it up to you to make the final adjustment?
I'm not really sure. Certainly with adapters, companies have gone the way of making things a little bit thinner to guarantee that you'll get infinity focus. The last thing a company wants is to sell an adapter or a lens where the customer complains that they can't reach infinity. So I can see making adapters focus past infinity, and then maybe they're doing the same thing with lenses, but usually a camera with a mount on it that is just its native mount out of the factory is very carefully shimmed and calibrated. So I think that would be the kind of thing that the lenses could be made to focus perfectly to infinity, and whether it's just being cautious or rushing things through so they can sell them cheaper, they're just simply not doing it.
Does anybody want to maybe start off with the particular brand or lens that they have or they're curious about? that if you have it, I'd like to know your thoughts. Let's make some recommendations and help steer people listening to this episode on where maybe they should start if they're looking.
I've got just one quick question. TT Artisans, 7 Artisans. Is it the same company, or just in Chinese they sound alike, or is that just happenstance that they're both artisans? Anybody happen to know that one?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting story. What happened was 7 Artisans was the first company that appeared on the scene, and they often use lenses that were made by a company called DJ Optical. So you'll see a lot of lenses that say 7 Artisans DJ Optical, and 7 Artisans kind of being the brand, and maybe they did the external design, but the optical design and the lens elements themselves came from a company called DJ Optical. And this was actually 7 people that got together and created this company, and one of them got annoyed with the others, decided he didn't like the way things were being run. So he struck out on his own, and he called his new company TT Artisan, singular, and it stands for the true artisan. So he claims he is the true artisan, and the remaining 6 artisans of 7 artisans are not true artisans. And he also used optical designs largely from DJ Optical. So you'll see 7 Artisans DJ Optical and TT Artisan DJ Optical, and they can in some cases be the exact same optical designs, although they are starting to differentiate themselves a little bit now and using slightly different optical designs to each other.
You couldn't see it, but I was holding it up to the camera. I have a TT Artisans. This is the 50095, and right on the beauty ring it says DJ Optical. So very well made, very heavy, beautiful piece of glass. But I regret to say that I've only used this lens like twice, so I need to use it more.
It has the depth of field at 0.95 is absolutely razor thin.
Yeah, it is.
It's really, really hard to focus.
I did shoot this once on a film camera on the Rollei 35, but I did not try to do anything close up on it. I just basically shot it like I would a normal prime far away. But then, because it's a Leica M mount, so I put it on my Nikon Z5 and played with it a little bit there too, and did some razor sharp bokeh shots, and it was fun. That's not a style of photography that I'm a huge fan of, though, but it was cool to do.
Stephen, was there a relationship between DJ Optical and DJI?
No, none whatsoever. A lot of people confuse them because the names are similar, but they're completely unrelated.
DJI is the drone manufacturer and also the owner of Hasselblad.
Yeah, they've really given themselves quite a prestigious brand name to start making things under. But, thinking of that, we're also seeing Viltrox lenses rebranded as Rotoloni and all sorts of different fancy German names. I think one of the first third-party lens manufacturers to do that was probably Cosina in Japan, making the Voigtlander lenses, which are kind of a nice option in between the price range of the Chinese lenses and the German lenses. You can get a Japanese Cosina lens for a fraction of a Leica lens.
Well, I'll just add, here's my Voigtlander Nocton aspherical f1.5. It's a new acquisition, so I can't tell you how it works yet, but it's a wonderful lens, and eBay was in the $300 range. And so it's online, it's listed as a Leica Slayer, and so far I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, Voigtlander is owned, the name, by a company here in Nuremberg in Germany. Ring Photo is the largest wholesaler of photo equipment in Germany.
And they still own the Voigtlander brand name, right?
Yes, only the brand name, yes.
But they still have their lenses are made in Japan, though.
Yeah, Cosina, I think so.
Well, I was saying you paid $300 for that lens, that 1.5?
That's right, yeah. I followed the Mike Ekman rule. I waited till it was on auction. Did not buy it now.
If you think about it, though, like, go back to the classic era, a Zeiss Icon Sonar 51.5, and look up what the price of that lens cost back then, and then adjust that for inflation today. And, that would have been a $2,500, $3,000 lens, and you're getting it for nearly 1/10 the price. So even that lens is a tremendous value. And optically, I guarantee you, what camera was that you had it on? I couldn't quite see the body.
I had it on a Voigtlander Bessa R3. So
okay. So you're shooting film with it then.
With that camera. And yes, I'm doing a shoot off. So yes, the lens you just mentioned, that's my shoot off. I've got the same film on both cameras, taking the pictures, and I'll see which one I like best.
With the exception of maybe some out of focus details, I'm going to go on record and say you're not going to notice much of a difference.
I had the same thing. You buy a M camera or Leica M. Could be a CL if you are like me with no much money. And you buy a 50, Leica 50, it's okay, but you want 35. So what I did, I went to Amazon. I found 7 artisans, a pancake for $70. It's very strange, but it's not bad. My question is, the glass is good. What's happening in China with glass? That's the key, I think. The polishment and the glass. So I really enjoy this pancake 35 millimeter fixed 5.6 aperture, and its manual focus is not connected with the rangefinder. But I could have a 35 in my M and for less than $100.
You do see some Chinese companies advertising that some of the elements in their lenses are made by Hoya in Japan, and they're definitely using it as a kind of premium thing of Japanese glass. But I think a lot of the glass is just coming from China, and I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't be all that great. And I think the only way that Chinese lenses are really lagging behind in a lot of ways is with coatings. They're not dealing with flare and shooting directly into bright lights quite as well as a lot of the other lenses, just because their coating technology doesn't seem to be quite up to the level that other countries have got it.
That's very interesting.
There's also, for me personally, I think a lot of people will say that the manual focus lenses are very premium and well built. They're very much pure metal bodies. They have very well damped and heavy focusing. And a lot of people think of that as indicating a premium feel, especially compared to a plastic autofocus lens that just moves so loosely. Personally, I find that a lot of the Chinese lenses are very heavily greased, that the focusing is very thick with grease. And if you take them apart, clean all that grease out, they kind of wobble a little bit on their helicoids. So I don't think they're machined very precisely. And I think they're throwing a lot of grease in there to make up for it, which some people think feels premium. I think is revealing the fact that they aren't quite as premium and precise as they'd like to be. And it does make me a little worried for some of the longevity in the long term of these lenses, that we might have to take them apart and re-grease them at some point as that grease breaks down or migrates all throughout the lens.
So don't leave your Chinese lenses in your hot car in the summer in the direct sunlight. It might melt them.
Definitely not good advice.
No, I think that's a good, point to make too, is there's going to be tricks in any industry where maybe people compensate for slightly lower quality control. And if they're doing that by putting in a thicker, more, less viscous lube or something, for lack of a better term, it can really trick people. Because, we had a discussion recently about a particular camera that I'm working on a review for, where a lot of people tend to comment on how heavy it feels and how solid it feels. And I think human minds are somewhat tricked into, when something feels heavy, we associate that with quality. Like, well, this thing's got some heft to it, it must be good. And, that's not always true. Certainly lightweight things can be good too. And putting in lead weights in your big Royal View camera just to add, some heft to it doesn't make it a better camera by any means.
Well, I think, Mike, a lot of the TT Artisan and 7 Artisan lenses are so brassed up and stainless steel. Here's a 21 millimeter 1.5 that I don't know what the optical formula is, but I'm sure it's got a lot of glass in it. But this lens weighs more than any of the Nikon, even the 50s. I mean, it's just a ton of glass in there and bulk. But actually, it feels really good. I mean, it's well balanced on the body. One of my favorite lenses of that type is the 50 millimeter f2 Super Panchro Cook lens that's made by Light Lens Labs. And Anthony I had 2 of these. I had a silver one and a black one. And Anthony now has the silver one. But these lenses are just fantastic as far as the rendering is concerned. They have almost a cinematic look to them, because they were, in essence, they were a cinema lens to start with.
I'm very happy with mine.
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun to use them. The thing about Light Lens Lab is that they have reverse engineered a lot of the classic Leica lenses. And now they're doing some of the ingenues. They did this, the Cook lens was a reverse engineered from a classic 1950s type lens. They just did one of the ingenue can't remember if it's an S15 or an S21, but it has the Alpha style depth of field scale on the barrel. I have one of their 35 millimeter f2 8-element lenses, which is a copy of the Leica.
Is it like dots?
Yes, it's the dots. Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about. It's
right. It's instead of like curved lines, there's dots, and something will appear behind it when you're at that spot on the depth of field chart. It's really neat looking.
Yeah, that's it. And so they're taking classic formulas and rebuilding them with newer coatings. Mike, you mentioned the glass and China making glass. Here in my area in Southwest Ohio, there is a glass factory called Fiyao that's owned by the Japanese or by the Chinese, and it was they make windshields, and they took the plant. The plant was actually an old General Motors assembly plant, and when General Motors decommissioned the plant, Fiyao bought it and started producing windshields. They brought in all of their own equipment from China, so they're making an effort to become players in the glass market worldwide.
I don't have really any understanding of how glass is made, right? I mean, I get it that it comes from sand-like minerals. They put them in a furnace, heat it up, melt it, turns into a lens. Obviously, there's a lot of steps in between there. But my question is, for anybody who knows, is there like an ideal, whether it's limestone, granite, I have no idea what type of rock is used to generate good lens. Is there certain areas of the world that are just naturally better at making the raw materials which become lenses?
It's borosilicate, isn't it, Stephen?
I believe so. I mean, there was always the rumors of Ernst Lights Canada having access to really great sand in Ontario, Canada, to make the glass for their lenses. But I think that was more marketing hype than anything. What it really becomes a question of is what the glass is doped with, where you've got things like lanthanum in various quantities, and your average lens type might have 5 or 6 different heavy metal elements, rare earth elements that are put in while the glass is being melted down. And that's what really gives you all the different qualities, because you're never dealing with one type of glass. You're always looking at a lens having multiple different types of glass that are having different types of refraction and sort of pairing things up to affect the dispersion of different colors and give you the best optical quality. So the way this kind of works and the indexes of refraction are kind of well known, and whether you have a lens made with, or the glass for a lens element made in Canada or Germany or Japan by Hoya or Schott or anyone else, they're all able to make different types of glass elements that have these different types of refraction for them. And really what it comes down to is price and consistency. That there was actually a time where, when all the stuff was kind of being measured by hand, every batch of glass would come out slightly different. So they'd have to test it to see what they actually got. And lenses were once designed to take this into account, that each batch of glass might be slightly different than the other. So you might have to have a lens design that allowed you to mechanically shim or shift lenses into slightly different positions based on that batch of glass. But we've gotten to a point now where everything's automated and controlled, that the glass is very consistent. And I think it's one of the main reasons they've been able to push lens design as far as they have, just knowing they'll be able to get consistent types of the glass that they need.
It's interesting because Stephen and I had this discussion in our own little group about Leica glass, how Leica did not make a lot of their own glass. They do, however, polish their own glass. So when they're making elements and grinding elements, they do that. It's the glass is only the raw material. The grinding, polishing, cementing of the elements, all of that is what has the major amount of impact on the quality of the lens itself. So I still don't know. I mean, I defer to Stephen's knowledge on it that they don't make their own material. I was at the Leica School in 1986 in Wetzlar. One of the demonstrations they did for us was to heat glass in an outdoor kiln they had in a 1 liter platinum crucible and pour the glass into the mold that made a solid sheet of the glass. My understanding at that time was that they were making it for the Noctilux, but Stephen does not think that is accurate, and I can't. My memory is not as good as it used to be, so I could be wrong, or they could just have been demonstrating it for me.
The first version of the Noctilux, they were making their own glass, and certainly through the 50s, 60s, that was definitely the case. But there's an Italian website with some very in-depth research going on into patents and manufacturing records, and they found that by the second version of the Noctilux lens, by about 1978, Leitz was no longer making their own glass, and it had long been assumed that, I think it had been known that they had started switching over at some point, and that they had always, the fans had assumed they had always switched over to shot glass made locally in Germany, but it turns out they were sourcing a lot of it from Ohara in Japan, who also made glass for Canon and Olympus quite a bit. And there's been rumors that haven't been confirmed yet that even some of the aspherical elements were being made for them by Canon. So by the late 70s, Leitz was switching over. And as we've seen some of the kind of anniversary editions of various Leica lenses, they've been made without, some of the anniversary edition Leica lenses have not used the exact same optical design that they used to, because they've been using glass that they're sourcing from other companies entirely, because their ability to make glass these days is long behind them.
Can you tell us about onions, Stephen?
This came up, we were talking earlier, you and I, Mike, about onion ring bokeh, which is a certain type of bokeh you can see, especially in the sort of Christmas tree lights in the background, the famous bokeh balls of highlights that expand out. And what you'll see in them is a series of concentric circles, kind of like if you cut an onion in half and see its rings. And what that's coming from is aspherical lens elements. And it's usually because they are molded, or in some cases they're pressed, but the molds have visible step lines in the way that they've been manufactured. And this then makes an aspherical lens that has these visible lines on it, and it shows up in the out of focus highlights. Some people don't like aspherical lenses for that reason. They prefer to just have a classic spherical element in all of the elements in a lens to avoid that. But Leitz, or now Leica, is kind of unique in that they've been able to make aspherical elements that don't have that onion ring effect in the bokeh. And it really just comes down to the fact that they're grinding and polishing their molds to make them absolutely perfectly smooth before they're manufacturing those lens elements. So they seem to be the only company that can make a lens with aspherical elements with perfectly smooth, clean bokeh balls.
So there you go. We were talking about the difference between a $10,000 Leica lens versus a $1,000 Fotolander lens, and that's how we got on the topic of onions. So I'd never heard that before, but he showed me an example, and you could definitely see it. Like he described, it's like looking at the inside of an onion with these concentric circles just kind of gently going up through your Christmas lights bokeh in the background. We talked about Light Lens Labs. We talked briefly about Viltrox. There's still some other brands out there, though, that exist. Like when I go on Amazon and look, are there any brands people should avoid? Are there any that are just truly junk? These are the lowest of the low. These companies are just making garbage and stay away from.
Mike, I think there can be variations in every single manufacturer lens made in China that are going to be bad. It isn't just one company. It's a particular lens itself that just wasn't assembled properly, or it was not, it wasn't made correctly. I don't know that there are any real manufacturers that I would say from start to finish. Though the only one I would really say that I really didn't like any of them was the MS Optics lenses. Kurt had a number of those. Did you keep any of them?
I did. The only one I still have, the Sonitar F1.3 50 millimeter. Part of the reason I kept it is it's got that kind of champagne chrome finish, which matches perfectly the body of the Rollei 35 rangefinder. And I got this body, and it's supposed to have a Zeiss 40 millimeter lens, is what it would have come with when it was new. And I never had the original lens. So this lens fits it perfectly. It looks like it matches. And I have shot this lens. It actually is pretty decent. I've never tried it digitally, but I have heard that comment before that you said Paul, that some of that guy's lenses, because it was one guy, right? Isn't
There was one
MS?
guy, doctor, I can't remember his name, doctor somebody. The barrels are also, I think, aluminum. So they're extremely lightweight. And
Yeah, they are very
that
light.
scares the hell out of me to start with. I had a bunch of them, including that Sonitar and a few of the other early, very early lenses. Those lenses, when they shipped them with a handwritten MTF sheet with them, so to show you exactly the specifications of the lens that you have. I had a 17 millimeter that was just wretched on digital because it was too close to the sensor. It was marginal on film.
That was serial number 1, wasn't it?
It was the first one, and I didn't keep any of them. They're so valuable that it was stupid for me to keep a lens that I really didn't like. But no, I don't think there's a manufacturer that you can put your finger on and say I'd stay away from that brand.
Gotcha.
I have one of the Venus Laowa, Laowa is the brand they sell them under now. A 15 millimeter f2 that I bought to use for astrophotography, which I never did, but I bought it for that reason. That's how I convinced myself I needed it. But it's actually a really sharp lens from corner to corner with good contrast. I know somebody who went through 3 of those lenses before they found one that was satisfactory. It just didn't work for him to shoot astro with it. He was getting some bad fall off and just generally not satisfactory images. The 4th one he got was fine.
Basically, we're back to the Soviet Union again with sample variation. Some of them are good, some of them aren't.
And in a lot of cases, if you've got a bad sample or you've damaged a lens, there is no repair for it. Even if a lens has local distribution, like Laowa has a Canadian distributor, but they don't do repairs. So if you scratch a front element of a lens or drop the lens, the cost to ship it back to China is in some cases more than the lens is worth. And so it's kind of a disposable item.
Yeah, they're not all the money in the world. That lens was, I think, $695 or something. I got mine from B&H. Yeah, that's really a problem with them. And if you go back, and this is going back 50 years or more, I remember when if you want to call it the Industrial Revolution hit China, a lot of the workers in China would rather drive a tractor than work in a factory.
There was a lot of incentive during the Cultural Revolution and working as a laborer because there was pride in not being a capitalist, right? Anybody who owns any possessions. So you would actually have a lot of kids from major cities like Shanghai going into farmlands and factories and working as a form of pride during those times. So yes, manufacturing being a factory worker was a source of pride, being a communist at the time. But in terms of the quality of manufacturing, it's very variable, right? Each factory had their own different management. They had their own quotas. They had their own different ways of doing things, depending on who's in that leadership of the factory. And often we're talking about people who are assigned to run the factory who are more of a political assignee rather than a technical one. So they may or may not even have management experience other than their positions in the party itself.
Well, and that's sort of like what happened in Russia to a certain extent, the Soviet Union rather. A camera would be made and then it would be taken to be repaired. So it was a 2-step process. The factory would turn out the camera and then a local repair shop would make it operational in many cases.
Yeah. And, a lot of manufacturing did not have an after sales component to it, unlike, what we're familiar with in North America, where you buy something from a manufacturer, you kind of expect them to have some sort of after sales warranty on the product for repairs or whatnot. I would say a lot of the things that were manufactured back in the day in China were, one and done. It's made. If it's broken, you go to your local handyman repair shop or you DIY'd it for any sort of repairs. And, that kind of persists in a lot of regards right now.
Is that a cultural thing, or is it still that in many cases the Chinese are able to make things for so affordable that it's not economically feasible to even bother sending it back? Or is it a little bit of both?
It might be a bit of both. To be honest, I think the warranty, the after sales warranty component is very much a Western thing. And thinking back, I'm just thinking about all the things that are made in China for even domestic consumption. The factory made it, and that was their job. They made the product for you to consume, and if you want it fixed, that's somebody else's job, and it's not the factory's job, right? And that's just been historically how it is. And now, obviously, there's a lot of Chinese-made products that come with great warranties, and I think that has a lot to do with the Western influence when they started making, become the world's factory, right? They started producing things for Western consumption, and there was a requirement for after sales quality control and warranty of products. So now that's becoming a thing in China domestically as well.
And I think there's an evolution that happens. I mean, it certainly happened in Korea. If you'll remember when things were made in Japan, and then you would see made in Korea, and there were quality control problems with many of the electrical, not just electronic, but even just electrical devices. And that evolved into now Korea turning out some of the best of the electronic devices, washing machines, refrigerators, cars. I mean, the Koreans have evolved into a major manufacturer, and China may be slightly behind them in some respects, but not. They won't be long. I mean, it's not going to be something that's going to continue for a long period of time, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I think, there's this a slight stigma to kind of made in China kind of label to things. And I think China's come a long way. I was just at CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and over 40% of the exhibitors were Chinese. Number one, of course, were kind of Western US based manufacturers, and number two there were like 1,400 exhibitors from China. And some of the technology that they were displaying were phenomenal. And what people don't realize is that China makes all tiers of products in terms of quality. And it's very much a capitalistic decision as to what we see in North America. And it's very much an economics game. If it makes sense for them to make money, to make a certain quality of product for a certain market to sell in, they will do it. Whereas if they're very capable and they have the capacity and the technology now to produce some very, very high quality products, and a lot of it actually stays domestically for domestic consumption and not exported simply because of economics. And if you talk to a lot of people that are in the manufacturing process, and I have a lot of friends that are in that area, and they go to China a lot, and they have vendors based in China. They buy both from China and in Europe. And what the general consensus right now is that China is starting to, if not already, leaving the European manufacturers, like specifically German manufacturing, behind in a lot of what they are doing right now. But in going back to cameras, in the case of the lenses, it very much may be a case of economics that they're producing certain things at certain qualities for the consumption and export into the US market.
And that's not new. I mean, you could go back and look at the mid-century German camera industry, and I'll just use an example like a Pentagon, for example. Those cameras were exported to the United States out west. But when they were maybe the only lens you could get for it, you only had one option. And it was usually one of the better ones because it was economically made sense to export the higher end model because then there was still a little bit of profit to be made. Whereas back in Germany, you might be able to get that camera with 4 or 5 different lenses, which were never available here. The Japanese auto industry did the same thing too, where you might be able to get a Toyota Camry in the United States, but there may only be 1 or 2 trim levels. Whereas in Japan, there could be 7 trim levels, both on the high end and the low end. They may have a Toyota that's comparable to a Cadillac. But in the United States, people who want a Cadillac aren't going to buy a Toyota. So they know, okay, it's difficult to sell here. Likewise, if there's an entry-level, base-level Toyota Camry, let's say with a manual transmission, crank windows, let's just pretend, that's probably not going to be sold here either because it just doesn't make financial sense to export such a lower-end model too. So, I mean, what you're saying, Norris, is just economics in general, and I don't think it's anything new, but with what you're saying, going to CES and seeing such a large number of Chinese manufacturers and them coming up with all this cool stuff. If it's the US Consumer Electronics Show, you're only seeing a small sliver of what these people are capable of.
I was with some Chinese partners of mine, they're vendors and they're manufacturers themselves, and we're walking around, and I was just looking at random things for consumer electronics, like hair dryers and things. I'm like, wow, these are really cool. They're really nicely designed. They're really high quality. They rival Dyson, for hair dryers. It's like, oh yeah, these things, they're everywhere in China. And I'm like, why don't we have these in the US? They are a fraction of the cost to the market leader. They seem to function just as well in terms of quality. He's like, well, I don't know, but the average Chinese would have this at their disposal for $25 to $75 a piece, and that's just the way the market works, right?
I've definitely seen over the past 10 years or so, a lot of brands appeared and were selling the exact same product and just different price points. And there were so many brands that kind of disappeared. A few went more upmarket and have started really establishing a name for themselves. Like I was looking at one lens and it sold under the Seven Artisans name, which I think most of our listeners will recognize, but it's also sold as a Yaxol, a Caxinda, and a number 8, which I don't think anyone has probably heard of, although apparently if you're a German Amazon user, you may have heard of number 8 or maybe even Yaxol. It might be a regional thing, and Caxinda might be limited to the Singapore market. But generally, this glut of brand names has started consolidating and some of the brands have fallen by the wayside. And the brands that have survived are kind of moving more upmarket because they've managed to establish a reputation for themselves. So companies like Seven Artisans, like Bright and Star, like Astor Hori, who did incredibly cheap $40, $50 lenses, are now in the realm of $200 to $500 to maybe $1,000 lenses. And they seem to be focusing a little bit more on only releasing quality products because they've established a brand name and a reputation, and they don't want to damage that in the marketplace now.
So this concludes the economics section of the camera. No, that was really interesting. And I think it's relevant too, because I think everything that we just talked about in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, helps explain why we're seeing this huge push, right? I mean, the Chinese certainly have gotten better at the polishing. They've gotten better at the making of the glass. Computational, whatever, computers are more powerful than ever before too. I mean, they're able to make these wide angle, ultra fast lenses with 9 elements and high build quality for reasonable prices that if you were to just take the classic lenses from the past and the Apolanthar and like the Fotlander Bessas, the inflation adjusted prices for some of those lenses are just unobtainium today, yet we're able to get lenses that just blow those old performers away. So the last thing I wanted to comment on, and I do want other people to be able to talk, so if anybody has any favorite lenses or any real-world experience, please jump in. But one thing that I want to point out, though, as the Camerosity Podcast, the classic film and digital, right, we tend to lean more towards older cameras, is that sometimes you don't want a computationally accurate 9-element, perfect diffraction, perfect glass lens, because in some cases, too much quality leads to a technically perfect but boring image, right? Like we like Tessars and we like the Soviet triplets and sometimes even meniscus lenses for that character that you do get from old lenses. And you could just go back and buy any number of Tessars in any amount or any mount and adapt them to whatever modern camera you want to shoot them on, or even if you still want to shoot them on old camera and get those beautiful images that you want. Or you can even get some of the companies that are mimicking the soap bubble bokeh lenses of the past, recreating the trial plan and things like that too. So, when you're in the market for a lens today, let's say you don't shoot film, you're only doing digital, but you like the old manual focus lenses, you have a lot of options. You could either just go for a classic lens you could pick up on eBay or buy for dirt cheap, and it's going to give you great images with character. You could go with a brand new lens that mimics that character, but in a new design, or you could go with a brand new lens that's pixel perfect, right? It depends on what you're looking for. What is your desire? Me personally, I like character. I like imperfect lenses. I like vignetting. I'm not as interested in a pixel perfect lens.
My latest gas acquisition, and I think my first of 2026, actually turned out to be a Chinese lens. And it was because I found a compelling matchup that I couldn't think of anything else to do with. I've talked about it on the podcast before, the Olympus Air A01. And it's a mirrorless camera that is basically just a cylinder. It looks like a teleconverter for a lens. It's a lens mount on the front and just this cylinder with a button on the top. And inside is a micro four thirds sensor. And it was meant to be something you would attach your cell phone to. This whole idea of getting pictures directly on your cell phone, but with a larger sensor. And it's a terrible idea because you've got to flip down this clip and mount your cell phone in it and unlock your cell phone and connect the Wi-Fi to the camera. You have to turn on the camera first, then connect the Wi-Fi, then start up the app, and then you can see what you're shooting, which is horrible compared to just turning a camera on. But it's really small, it's really unusual, and I've owned one and never known what to do with it. You can use it without a cell phone. But the thing I found is that when you're literally just holding a cylinder, what is seemingly a lens with another lens or teleconverter behind it, it's virtually impossible to hold it level. You have no horizontal rectangle like a camera to reference it, and all of my pictures are running up tilted, so that didn't seem like a good way to use it, and this was just sort of a frustrating piece for me that sat in my collection, until something finally occurred to me. If you're shooting with a circular fisheye, something that's producing a circular image, it doesn't matter if the image is rotated. So what I needed was a circular fisheye for this camera. And one of the biggest problems with circular fisheyes is because of their immense field of view, you often end up seeing the grip of the camera or your fingers in it. So the best thing for a circular fisheye lens would be this camera that you can hold it out at arm's length. So what I got is a 220 degree circular fisheye. Well, it might be 225 degrees. There seem to be two companies selling this lens. One says it's a 3.5 millimeter, one says it's a 4 millimeter. And the company that says it's the wider focal length says it's a shorter or a smaller field of view. So I haven't quite figured it out. It's either 220 or 225 degrees, but it's a perfectly circular image that I can have the camera rotated to any weird angle and it doesn't matter. And I can very easily hold just the back half of the camera and hold this out way in front of me so that my feet and my head aren't in the picture and my fingers don't get in the picture. And if I want to, I can connect my cell phone over Wi-Fi to see what I'm doing. And as an added bonus, the bottom of the camera is flat. So because this lens is 220 degrees, it can actually see behind itself. You can stand in front of a wall and with the wall behind you, it will photograph that wall. And in the same vein, if you just use the flat bottom and set this on the ground facing straight up, it will photograph everything straight up. And all the way to the sides, it will photograph the ground underneath it. So you can just set this on the ground and using your cell phone to check the shot if you want, you can run and hide somewhere where you won't be seen and leave this to photograph your surroundings in a pretty unique way. So for me, this was a rather unique piece, and I've definitely been aware of things like if you think back to the film days and an SLR lens, a fisheye lens that was an 8 millimeter, 180 degree fisheye, it was absolutely massive. This thing is tiny and it was $105 US. So I can't imagine any other way that I would have attempted to do something like this.
Wow.
Have you ever heard of a camera? It was a digital camera called the Nikon Key Mission 360.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I have.
Yeah, they were made for virtual reality.
Really?
Work. Yeah, I sold quite a few of those. They were medical schools were buying them. I'm not exactly sure what they were doing with them, but they were one of the big purchasers of those models.
And the various Chinese action cam companies like DJI are making versions. GoPro's got their own. And believe it or not, one of the most popular is Ricoh. They make a camera called the Theta. And a lot of these cameras are very thin with two fisheye lenses on opposing sides, at least 180 degrees each.
That's what the Key Mission is. Yeah, It's got two lenses and it stitches them together.
And there were regular Key Missions kind of like GoPros, but there was that 3D version. There was even a Chinese-made Kodak Pix Pro that did that thing, where the idea is that if you're doing real estate, you can set this up and create a image that you can scroll around and see from any angle. Or if you're putting this on the end of a selfie stick and you're doing extreme sports, you just have this thing sticking up and it's capturing 360 degrees, and you'll just choose how to frame things later on your computer.
I switched to Nikon Z last year, and really the only way I was able to do it is because of the budget lenses coming out of China. So when I first got my camera, I could not afford to buy the 85 1.0 1.8S. So I got the TT Artisan 75 f2, which is a really nice lens, but it definitely has some faults with it, because of the price point. So like flaring was really bad with it, but I feel like a lot of the issues that I've had with the lenses are things that other people would be okay with on a vintage lens. So if you're spending that kind of money on vintage lenses anyway, it's kind of nice to also have the autofocus, So I also have the 7 Artisans 85 1.8. I could not afford to get the Nikon Z835 1.8, but and then I'm videoing myself with the Viltrox 14mm f4.
Nice. You got some straight lines. Looks good.
Are those lenses in native Z mount, or are they?
Yeah, so they are native Z mount. So I don't have to mess with adapters with vintage lenses.
Do you think if you buy a Nikon will be better pictures or?
Yeah, so I did end up switching to the 85 1.8S once I could afford it, and it doesn't have the flaring issues. I shoot a lot of photos that are very strongly backlit of nature. The 75 f2 has really nice bokeh, and the autofocus was really fast and accurate, but I could not deal with the flaring for my type of photography. If you're a photographer who's often shooting with the sun to your back, it'd probably be fine. But for my type of photography, it didn't really work. I did really like the bokeh though.
Well, the difference is there, huh?
Yeah.
Which Z do you have?
I have ZF.
Oh, the ZF. Okay. I have the Z5, and the only native Nikkor lens I have for it is the 40 f2. You guys probably heard me say this a bazillion times. 40 millimeters is my favorite focal length because it's just how my eyes naturally see the world. But in addition to that being a great focal length and an incredibly sharp lens and super fast autofocus, it's very compact. It's lightweight. It does have a plasticky mount, so it's plausible it may not last forever. But for the price, though, you can't really beat it. I mean, that's if you're gonna get a Z and you just need kind of a general purpose walk around lens, the 40 f2 is great to go with. But like you found out, adapting them is really easy to do. Steven will tell you something about the filter stack that makes them more appealing to be adapted to other lenses from other mounts. A fun fact is the Nikon Z mount has a thinner flange distance than even the Sony Alpha, the E mount. So if you have a Sony digital mirrorless lens, you can actually still adapt that to Nikon Z, and it'll still focus to infinity because of how thin Nikon made their flange distance. So you just have a ton of options.
Yeah, I did something kind of funny. I bought the Sony E adapter, and then when I buy adapters for my vintage lenses, I get the Sony,
right,
like Nikon F to Sony, because the E mount has been around for longer,
right?
So you can actually find more mounts.
It's gotten better. I've had my Z5 for a couple years now, and when I first bought it, my favorite lens is the Killfit Macro Keelar 40, and the version I had was the one that I gave to Paul. It had the Alpha mount, and on my old Sony, you could get an Alpha to Sony adapter for $15, $16. But then when I started looking for Nikon Z, there was only one option. It was $150, and I wasn't going to spend $150 on an adapter. So I just bought, like what you just said, a Sony E to Nikon Z adapter, then plugged the Alpha to Sony adapter onto it. I had double adapters, but it worked great, worked perfectly. I've since changed to the M42 version, so I don't have to do that anymore. But it really does open up the world of adapting lenses, and it has gotten better, though. There are a lot more options for the Nikon Z than there were 2 years ago.
And while you can get them, if the lawsuit goes ahead, there are some real gems from Viltrox for the Nikon Z mount. I call it Z because I'm Canadian. Like the 14mm f4 prime. So it's extremely wide. It's a 14mm full frame lens. It's an f4, so it's kind of slow, but it's nice and small and light. And it's $200 US. So that's the kind of lens where if you wanted something from Nikon, you're looking probably at an ultra wide prime or a zoom that's incredibly heavy, incredibly expensive, and you might not use it all that often. But for something small and light and $200 to throw in your bag in case you might want it, I think it's a compelling option.
Since we've kind of already leaned in towards like recent gas pickups, Stephen with his fisheye for his Olympus Air thingamajigger, which I remember when you brought that up a couple episodes ago, I definitely added it to my opportunistic gas list because it is something that I could see myself playing with someday. But I feel like there's an opportunity for some of us to talk about some recent pickups, some acquisitions that we've had.
Well, I have a new toy.
What is that?
Let's explain to you. I have a wide range of Leica R cameras from the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and some lenses for the R single lens reflex Leicas. And I have 2 M mount Leicas, and the same lens from the R costs 1/3 of the M. So I said, why not buy a converter from R to M? And I play with it today, and the results are great. Of course, you don't have the rangefinder connection, but the glass is beautiful. The R glass in an M in camera. So I got a lot of fun today.
I do that, Fernando. I use I have one of the 35 f2 Summicron version 1 R lenses, which is 9 elements in 8 groups. And I shoot that on the Leica M10 because I can use live view to focus.
Okay.
But, or the Visiflex. But yeah, no, there are a lot of adapters available now to put R lenses on M bodies. And the results are very good. In fact, I just got an adapter to use R and M both on the Hasselblad X2D camera, which is a larger format sensor. But those lenses are designed to cover it. The 35 millimeter f2 becomes a 28 millimeter, slightly brighter than an f2 because of the way it formulates. But it works fine. It covers it beautifully.
Do you think an R similar to an M would be about the same, or
as far as what, quality-wise?
Yes, quality and
yeah, the R lenses are fantastic lenses. You know, they're just designed differently. But you know, a Summicron is a Summicron, an Elmarit is an Elmarit. I think, you know, so it should be the equally good on either one.
So I shouldn't say too loud about it, because then the people will begin to buy a lot of Rs.
Well, they are. In the U.S., R lenses have become very, very costly because the Cine people are buying them and declicking them.
Yes.
It's a big thing in the U.S. for using R lenses for Cine work.
Maybe that's where the Chinese are getting all their glass from. They're getting Leica R lenses and grinding down the glass. And that's why we can't find the lenses anymore. I'm kidding, of course.
They are expensive. I mean, if you look at the price of a 19 millimeter R lens.
Search for any Leica Flex on eBay. Almost none of them have lenses. They're always body only. It is rare to find any Leica Flex or an R with a lens anymore.
The same thing is true of Alpha. There are a lot of Alpha bodies out there with no lenses because the lenses are very valuable, much more so than the bodies are.
I have to add that every time we make the Camerosity in Spanish, we make a resume of the last Camerosity in English.
So you summarize our show?
Yes.
See, here's the problem. I don't speak Spanish, so like I can't really listen to what you guys are talking about, but that's really cool.
It's time to learn, Mike.
Yeah. If I'm going to learn another language, I want to learn something that's going to help me with cameras. I'm going to learn, Russian or something.
Japanese or Russian.
Japanese, yeah. Today's February 2nd, and it's going to be about a week before we get this out, but there's still time. You're going to Abe's show on the 22nd, right? In February?
Right.
Norris, are you going to be there too?
I will be, yeah.
Okay, so Norris is going to be there. I know Vlad Kern's going to be there. That's what made me thinking of Soviet cameras. So Vlad's going to be there. I will be going too. I'm not going to get a table. So Robert, I'll hang out with you for a little bit. I kind of the last few shows I've gone to in Cincinnati, in fact, all the ones I've gone to in Cincinnati, and then the last couple I've gone to in Chicago, I had a table. And while that was super cool, I really didn't get a chance to just walk around and talk to people. So I'm kind of looking forward this time to just going and just chatting with people, and maybe I'll actually buy something.
Good.
This one is on Sunday, February 22nd at the Sheraton Suites, Chicago Elk Grove Village. It's right off of the Jane Addams Memorial Expressway, so it's fairly easy to get to off the interstate. I'm in Indiana, so it's a bit of a hike for me, but Bob probably is like, quit your whining. I make the drive every time. But if anybody's listening to the show and you're anywhere near that...
Mike, I'll be going as well.
Who said that?
This is Mark.
Cletus. Oh, Mark. Okay. All right. Cletus is going to be there. I'm sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if Doug Wellaby doesn't show up too.
Okay. Doug might be there. Now, Paul, have you ever gone to any of the Chicago shows?
No, I haven't.
Never.
I don't even. I only go to the Cincinnati shows to hang out with people I know. So I just do 2 of those a year, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of these times maybe you'll have to come up. You've never met Robert in person.
No, I know, and that would be the only reason I would come. Hey, Mike, can we ask Robert about the Nikon M?
Yeah,
we can do it because this won't be out before that. Whatever happens, Robert, some guy on Facebook posted a picture of a camera that he had acquired somewhere, and nobody really knows where. But it's a first version non-sync M with the correct lens, the 50 f2,
okay. The Tokyo one.
Tokyo lens.
It's a collapsible or hybrid f2, I should say.
It's a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
It is a C, which sort of surprised me a little bit.
No, they're all C's.
They were all C's, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. And he had a 135 f4, which I think we established was also the version 2.
Version 2 is 904 serial number, yeah.
Yes. Yep, that is correct. And it looks like it's in fairly decent condition, except the previous owner engraved his name on the very top of it. Very small.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw the pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mike and I both have been talking to the guy. It's interesting. He doesn't really know what it is, and nobody's really taken advantage of him, which is what I think Mike and I were both trying to prevent happening.
I mean, the issue is it is a valuable body. It is a genuine M. It is has the hybrid lens, which what that means is it was a collapsible, but they turned it into a rigid by basically adding a collar to it that prevents you from collapsing it again.
The lenses are worth more than the camera, actually.
Right.
Really?
But
okay.
Yeah.
But this is a guy knows nothing about cameras. He can't test it. He can't even tell you whether the rangefinder is accurate or not. I tried to help him through email. Very nice guy. I wish him the best of luck. But it's like if you really want to get maximum dollar as a seller, you have to be able to speak to condition. And while I personally don't care about engraved cameras, I love the history. Knowing that so many people back then used to engrave their names in cameras, that was just what they did. To me, that's part of the camera story, but that does kill the value.
Yeah.
It being an M, though, it still has some value. It's just, is that value $400? Is it $1,500? Nobody really knows because, you go look at sold auctions on eBay. I think there's like one. And it was, over $1,000. You go on Buy and the prices are all over the place. You could find them for as cheap as $500. You could find them for $2,500. So, unfortunately, and this applies to a lot of cameras. Anytime you get into something that's rare, uncommon, Paul, you have that problem with that Apple Lanthar Bessa. You know it's worth a decent amount, but what is the actual number someone's going to pay for it? You just don't know. And this guy wants to get a fair price for it. And it's like, well, most people don't want to overpay. He'd probably be happy if someone offered him $1,500 for it, but I just don't see that happening.
The hybrid lens is worth more than the camera. Okay. The lens itself, they used to sell for like $1,200, just that normal lens. The 135 f4s used to sell for $1,000. Now times have changed a little bit, so you have to come down from that. But the camera body is the least valuable of the set.
And that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want an M body.
He's not going to get that much on eBay, I don't think. Where else has he got to sell it? You can't go to a show. You can't go to pawn shops. Where are you going to sell something like that nowadays? So the most he could probably get for that whole outfit would be, at this point in time, $1,500, like you were saying right now. I don't think anybody's going to offer more than that.
No,
right, but that's retail.
Yeah. I might buy it from him. It's I made him an offer on it, and he's interested in it. I think it'd be sort of fun to have it.
both lenses are quality collectibles. Okay, there's nothing. The lenses are the gems in the set. All right, the body's collectible too, but it'd be more collectible if it didn't have that engraving on it. But the thing is, the lenses themselves are quality collectibles because the hybrid lens was only made for a short period of time before they came out with the rigid barrel. And at 135 f4, they only made about 600-700 of them. Okay, and this is a long time ago, 1949, 1950.
I don't want to say the number on the show, but Paul told me what he offered him, and I think it's a fair price.
Good. That's all you can do is offer fair. You can't steal anything anymore.
Right.
Those days are over.
Well, and you just never really know when, and I don't know this guy at all. He contacted me through email. It seems like a genuinely decent dude. I know nothing about him. So if you hear this episode, we're not saying anything ill. However, I've dealt with these kinds of sellers before. They just don't know, and this isn't their thing, and they don't want to get ripped off, and I completely understand that. But you could either get what something is worth by putting a roll of film through it, speaking to its accuracy, giving much more detailed information, and then sadly breaking it apart. That's how you're going to get your maximum amount of money. Keep it together, selling it as is. I don't know if this thing works, and that just kills your value. So really, this seller needs to just decide, do I just get rid of this camera for the fair offer that Paul offered me, or am I going to hold out for more? If he wants to hold out for more, he could be waiting a long time.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, too, the primary problem with those early bodies, everything from that period of time, is the shutter curtains. Okay. Right. The curtain quality, Nikon had to change their source of curtain material like 3 or 4 times. Okay. They were having all kinds of trouble with the curtains. They didn't make it themselves. They bought the curtains from other suppliers. And for the most part, probably 90% of all the Nikon M's have, if they don't have replaced curtains, they have bad curtains. Okay. And replacing the curtains is not difficult. It's like a curtain. All right, the dimensions are the same thing as a Leica. You know, if a man can change a Leica curtain, he can change a Nikon rangefinder curtain. They're the same thing. But nowadays, you can't find people that can do that very often.
Alan won't do it, right?
No, Alan won't do it. No.
Our favorite repair guy, Alan Wade, won't touch Nikon curtains.
Really? It's the same thing. How about, have you asked him about the curtain? Has he said anything about the curtain? Because usually they have light holes in them all over the place, or they're wrinkled up terrible. And
all we can see in the images is probably the first curtain.
Yeah, and it look good.
It looks okay. Yeah, but you can't. You can only see it from the film compartment side. If it's going to have cracks, it's probably going to be on the other side, and it's not as easy to tell.
You don't know how. It depends on how the thing was stored for all these years. You get a camera that's not used for 50 years. If it's not stored properly, it's going to be bad. Okay, and some of their curtain. Actually, one of the people that they bought their curtain material from was a raincoat company. A company that made raincoats. Okay. They also, for a time, bought shutter curtain material from Kodak, and also they had another company that made parachutes. So they bought their
Trojan condoms. Maybe used to make shutter curtain,
but a lot of the stuff they bought from the raincoat maker were rubber coated. Right. Okay,
yeah,
and that's broken down over time. Okay, it's terrible. But it's just one of the problems that they had. They had to change their supplier at least 3 or 4 times, and they had all kinds of troubles with it. But that was their biggest problem, was their shutter curtains. So nowadays, when you find those cameras, if you find one with a nice set of curtains, grab it, because those are rare. I've probably had 25 or 30 M's over the years, right? And I bet you only 5 or 6 of them had really nice shutters.
Yeah.
That's it.
That one you let me borrow worked perftly. I wish you still had it.
That was a beauty. That was a very early one, too. That was a 6-digit. That was only 860th camera made, and it held up, but it must have been stored properly. Now, I bought it here in Chicago, so I don't know where it was stored. Our weather is not too bad if you have stuff stored properly. But some places, you go to down south with the humidity, or down out west with the dryness, it affects all that stuff. So who knows?
Real quick buyer's guide for the Nikon M for anybody listening. Nikon M means it has an M in front of the serial number. There's 3 primary groups. I mean, like what Robert said, there's a ton of subtle variations, but you could group all M cameras into 3 groups. The last one, the least valuable, and it's still valuable, but it's the least valuable, is what we call the MS. Right. It has an M serial number, but it has the 4 flash sync ports on the side, just like the S does. Those are the last ones, right?
Well, actually, it's the second half. The second half of the production. The first half of the production does not have it. The second half does. So
that's what I mean by so that's group 1 is the MS. Then the first half, which is what you're talking about, are the ones that have an M serial number and no flash sync ports.
No flash sync.
Which is what this guy is selling. But then the rarest and most valuable M's are the 6-digit, but if you look at the serial number, there's an M and then a space and then the serial number. And those were, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, those were original Nikon ones that were sent back to the factory and converted, right?
What it was is, okay, they made these top plates in mass, okay, and they numbered it sequentially. When they dropped the 1 and went to the M, they still had these top plates left over they were going to use on 1. So they took these top plates and they engraved an M on them. This M stands out. Okay. Right. In other words, it's done at a separate time, and you can tell that M is not engraved at the same time as the number is. Later on, that disappears. The M and the number are all done at the same time. So we don't know how many plates, probably around 600-700 plates were left over from the M. They would have been 1s, but they were turned into M's. Yeah, they had 400, something like 400 M or 1s still in inventory when they switched to the M, and those 400 were changed to MSs. So, or M's, I should say. So it gets, if you had that six-digit M that you had in your hands, Mike, that was originally going to be a 1.
If anybody hearing this show finds one of these, your best bet is to contact both Paul and Robert simultaneously and have them bid against each other. And that would be how you would get the maximum amount of money for that one. But that only applies, maybe Norris too. I don't know, Norris, you might kind of want to jump out. No?
I got an M, but it's not a six-digit one.
What serial number?
Is it backwards? It's 609.
Okay, does it have sync?
It does not have sync.
Good, that's an M then. No sync, that's an M. That's not an MS, that's an M. You don't have any added on PC sockets anywhere, do you? Because a lot of people did that.
It's pretty clean.
Nope, okay. That is an M. Which lens do you have on it? 1.4?
It's a 1.4.
Yeah. What's the serial number on that? I can't see.
It's 500.
Yep, that's the first version of the 1.4, the 505s. Yeah. That's early, very early 1.4.
Awesome. This is like the antique roadshow.
Well, the first run of the 1.4s started with 5005, which stood for May of 1950, and that's when they came out. So
very cool.
They made probably about 2,000 of them, but they made half of them in screw mount. At that time, half of the production was in screw mount. Yeah. So
there are M's out there with screw mounts.
No, he means the lens.
Screw mount lenses.
Oh, the lens,
to Leica and Canon users. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A lot of Leica users bought Nikon screw mount lenses because Nikon made certain lenses that Leica didn't make. And they made some lenses that were better than Leica at that time.
I got a 1.4 screw mount. Many did find it.
Yeah. The 1.4 screw mount is a very also, they made the 35-1.8 screw mount is more popular than anything, really. You can find, and the 25.
Norris, they did make a prior. There was at one point plans to make screw mount Nikon rangefinders. There are a couple prototypes do exist. I have images of them on my site, but originally they were going to make 50. Then they reduced that down to like 10, and then they just scrapped it all together.
Mike, in Tokyo, I've held those prototypes in my hand. They were called the Leica L, and they had screw mounts.
That's very cool.
Nikon L.
Yeah. I need a Robert in my pocket, like or something.
Well, if you want to see Robert,
I'll be there. I'll be there on the 22nd. I hope
22nd of February in Sheridan Suites, Chicago Elk Grove Village. Come say hi.
In the Chicago area.
Yeah. I'll have a couple tables. I was there last time and I was overwhelmed, so I'm gonna. Yeah.
Well, we'll see everybody at the show. We'll be there. Yep. And then maybe we'll see what Vlad's doing afterwards. In that spirit, I want to talk about, I'm excited to share, I finally ventured across the pond and placed my first ever buy order. I was encouraged by both Steven and Norris simultaneously. Both you guys were kind of giving me tips on how to do it because I was always intimidated by the whole process. So I won 4 auctions. One of them had 2 cameras in it. So I have 5 of them coming to me. I bid really low. I mean, I was going for cheap stuff, but I was able to find 2 of the Sankyo Koki. That's the name, right? The original Olympus pens. I might be saying the name wrong.
Sankyo Shoji.
That's it. Yeah, I got 2 of those coming to me. A Nikon SLR. I got an Arco 35, which I've been really gassing for a long time. It's not the exact variant I wanted, but the one that I want is extremely expensive, and I got this one for 20-some bucks. And a couple other cameras. So I did the consolidation, and I told these guys, I said, I have no idea how much this is going to cost. Being in the United States with all the goofy tariff crap, I had no idea how much it was going to cost. And I said to them, I will be happy if this costs me less than $100. And the price was $99.93. So apparently they heard me. And it came to $99.93. So it just shipped today. So I'll have to, come back and talk about when I get them, if I get them, that is.
That site's terrible for gas problems.
It really is. Well, and another misleading thing about it is a lot of the cameras are listed incredibly cheap. And while sniping is common on eBay and other auction sites, that Bai builds in sniping, like they flat out encourage it on every single auction. So like you don't get any clue whatsoever what something's going to go for until it ends. So you're going to see cameras like us with opening bids of like $20, and it's not going to sell for that, but when basically everybody who's looking at or interested in buying that option is using a sniping tool or the built-in sniper, you just never really know what something's going to go for. But when you get stuff that's rare but not collectible, you can usually, like the Arco, you can usually get them for really cheap. And if you know what you're looking for, it can be very addictive. So beware.
Mike, you just got to wake up at like 5 a.m. or something in Japan time and watch the auction end.
I have two experiences with Bai. Both of them I ordered in as-is condition from the like flea market side of things. I ordered two Minolta 35 2s. Both of them trashed, but I did get the Super Rockor 45 2.8 and 5cm f2 in pretty nice condition. So I'm going to say it's a win. It was like $200 total. And then I got Sony RX 100 in as-is condition, and it was
nice.
Very broken.
Very broken. Well, they were right then.
Bai is very dangerous for me because the last thing that I bought from them, and it's currently sitting in the warehouse waiting to be joined by some friends for a consolidated package, was I went looking for a lens hood and ended up buying a lens that included the hood I wanted. And then just yesterday, I decided to look for a battery charger for a Nikon DSLR that I own, and was thinking, yeah, I could buy a charger for just $12, or for only $60 more, I could get the charger with a battery and also with a Nikon D200 body that I don't need but kind of want. And all of a sudden, things start just snowballing.
Yeah, there's lens gas and you have battery gas.
I do like my genuine OEM batteries and chargers, which makes things very difficult, especially when the only way to get them is to buy one of the cameras.
Well, let's kind of wrap it up here, unless anybody else has any. Will Pinkham, come on, man. We haven't spoken to you yet. What's new in your...
I did have a question. Lenses is definitely my weakness, so which is why I was really interested to listen tonight. When you were talking before about like old lens formulas and imperfections in lenses, and even mentioning the Nikon Z mount, I like that. Does anyone have any thoughts, opinions, or experiences with any of the Lomo lenses? They're like Petzval series or their Art series or any of those formulations they've recreated from the past and are now putting into more modern cameras.
I haven't used them, but I have noticed that after they did sort of a portrait focal length Petzval lens, that it seemed to be really well received, and they've gone on to make them in, 4 or 5 different focal lengths now, so you can cover pretty much every focal length you'd ever want with that kind of swirly bokeh kind of look.
Yeah, I noticed that. They had a couple other ones that were just different formulas, but I was looking at them while we were talking, and I thought it was interesting that they actually had them for the native, the Canon R mount and the Nikon Z mount, which we were saying.
And they're purely manual lenses, so they'll get away with that without being sued. And originally they had made them for DSLRs, but now have gone quite crazy with all the mirrorless mounts. So I haven't used them myself, but it sounds like the original ones that they did on Kickstarter for the DSLRs had some build issues. I don't know if they sorted that out and the later models are better or not, but maybe just the earlier ones. But now moving into the mirrorless mounts, they seem to have ironed out all of their production problems. And from all I've heard, which is not much, and I've not used them personally, but I've heard nothing but good things about them.
So you're going to buy one then, Will, and then talk about it in the next episode? Is that the plan?
I might. I was glancing through them all, and it was I was like intrigued by some of them. Yeah, definitely. I think that I put that on my list. I forgot one more thing. Super excited. So I was out this weekend at an art gathering at a coffee shop, wearing my Camerosity T-shirt in the wild underneath another shirt and stuff. And as I was leaving, there was a young lady that said, "Hey, can I ask you about your T-shirt?" And I said, "You certainly can." And I said, if I could take this other shirt off, you could scan a QR code. But I told her all about it. I said, you should check out the podcast. She was into photography a little bit, both digital and analog. So I said, check it out. Join us if you can. It's super fun. She said, I have no interest in like the equipment side of things or hardware. She's like, that's never been a thing. I said, well, you might if you listen.
Very cool.
So,
spreading the word. Yeah, that's great. And you can get the shirts. I mean, I have the link at the bottom of every episode since we've had them. I have a link on my site. We don't stock them in inventory. You literally just buy them from the company that I made them from. So they'll basically, you just pay we make nothing off of it. We get no benefit from this at all other than the excitement that there's one more shirt out there. So Pat's got his on. I sometimes wear mine. It's a bright yellow shirt with our logo on the front, a huge QR code in the back, which is our join link, which is just join.camerositypodcast.com. Get yourself a t-shirt. I'll have my first review of the year out tomorrow. You'll have to find out. By the time you hear this, it'll already be out. But for you guys, it's out tomorrow. Our next show following the 3-week cadence will be Monday, February 23rd at the usual time. Theo will be back from Japan, so hopefully he will have some stories of how he went there. He plans on visiting a variety of camera shops. I know a couple other people want to come on that show too. We have some ideas for some upcoming shows I alluded to at the beginning of the show. We hope to get some of those going too, but even if we don't, you guys kind of know what to expect. As always, the topics and discussion on the Camerosity podcast are influenced by you. This show was literally taken from a suggestion on the Discord server, so that's kind of how that works. If you have any ideas, let us know, or just come on and ask us questions. But I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Lively discussion on some of these modern lenses and some insights from Norris that we wouldn't have any other way. So thank you guys, and have a good rest of your week.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good
night.
Bye.
Adios.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, guys. I may have to pop off here a little bit. This morning, my furnace was out.
Oh, no.
So they came out and they fixed it. And then about 6 o'clock, it went out again. So I've been on the phone with the tech. It's running again now, but he's going to call me back. We're going to see if it continues to run. So if you see me disappear, that's where I've gone.